Welcome back, everyone. Our next speaker is Steve Finkelstein from the Vitamin Shoppe on optimizing omni-channel inventory. Steve is the Senior Director of Inventory at Vitamin Shoppe and has been with them for 4 years in numerous roles. In 2020, Steve took on full responsibility for merchandise planning and inventory organization. His focus has been on driving sustainable improvements in product availability while reducing inventory ownership by upgrading talent, updating their processes, and putting the right tools and software in place to support their team and goals. Welcome, Steve.
Thanks for having me. Can everyone hear me all right? Yep. All right, well, good morning, afternoon, and evening, depending on where in the world you are located. My name is Steve Finkelstein, as I was just announced, and I'm the Senior Director of Merchandise Planning and Inventory at the Vitamin Shoppe. First, a little bit about the Vitamin Shoppe. Since our New York City debut in 1977, the Vitamin Shoppe has existed to nurture the hearts, minds, and bodies of those on a quest to take control of their well-being. Our goal, to help people become their best selves, however they define it. In our 40 years, we've expanded our global reach to more than 730 stores, introduced innovative brands and products to millions of wellness seekers, and become a respected brand that customers rely on for trusted solutions, guidance, and personalized services. Our key brand pillars are quality, innovation, and expertise. But rather than hearing about that from me, I've included the following video, which I think you'll all agree is far more exciting than hearing it from me. Can you play the video, please?
Can you help me?
I need some advice.
I'm looking for some information.
I'm considering keto. I'm paleo.
Vegetarian.
Gluten-free. Carnivore. I'm not giving up anything.
Want to sleep better, work out better.
Feel better. See better.
When I take my shirt off, I just want people to go, mm-hmm. Keep up with my kids. Be more alert.
I'm training for a marathon.
I power lift.
I'm a gardener.
Cyclist. First responder.
Couch potato. I want to get strong.
Like my mom, smart like my big brother.
I have joint pain, high blood pressure.
I am a menopausal nightmare.
I can make it happen. I just need some support.
I need a coach. Some discipline.
A plan, a guide. So, can you help me? We can.
We can.
We can help you be better, your best self. We're so much more than vitamins. We can coach you, guide you. You can do it. Trust us.
Living my best life.
We have it. We can order it. Set up auto delivery.
We can ship it. We can be better, quicker,
We can be more
learn more.
Do more.
For you,
every day.
Pop, pop, don't stop. Living my best life. Living my best life. Living my best life. Do what I feel like. Living my best life.
All right, so as kind of mentioned in the introduction, over the past 4 years at the Vitamin Shoppe, I've had the opportunity of jumping around the organization quite a bit. In hindsight, it couldn't have prepared me better for this project. My roles included being responsible for inventory systems, supply chain analytics and reporting, space and floor planning, and most recently being responsible for merchandise planning and inventory, as well as item data here at the Vitamin Shoppe. During my time in supply chain analytics, I really had the opportunity to fully understand how the product physically got from vendor to DC to store. And on the other hand, my time in space planning allowed me to lead the re-engineering of the process for how an item gets from ideation to shelf, ensuring that there are key stage gates built into the process so that when the planogram is released, we know the right items are assigned to the right stores, ultimately allowing us to build our replenishable assortment directly from our planogram software. But I'll touch on that a little bit more later in the presentation. As a leader, my focus has always been find the right people, surround them with the process and tools to get the most out of the skills on their team, and then further build those skills by putting in sustainable processes driven by systems. That is a lot of how we kind of ended up choosing RELEX, or really starting our search for a replenishment system. Just from a macro standpoint on all of the replenishable data, the Vitamin Shoppe has 730 stores, 2 distribution centers, about 6,700 SKUs per store, which comes out to 4.9 million product location or store SKU combinations, coming from 600 plus vendors. And being a specialty retailer, we're focused on innovation, We're highly promotional, and we have a wide assortment to make sure that we have what each of our customers need. So why RELEX? So some of the challenges that we faced, first and foremost, were over the past few years, we've been working hard to elevate the talent on the inventory team with the goal of moving away from being inventory operations and transforming into inventory or merchandise planning. We were very successful in finding top talent, but what we quickly realized was that they were handicapped by the tools and systems that we're using, making their plans or strategies very difficult to bring to market. Additionally, we have a large store footprint, relatively long assortment, and a rather small team consisting of only 11 associates. Using our previous systems or reports only allowed the team to focus on our top selling SKUs, which left a lot of opportunity for sales growth on the table, especially knowing how different each store sells. If the item wasn't a chain-wide success, it was pretty much run on autopilot because it would not meet their criteria for review, which tended to be low in stocks or high sales. Rapidly changing assortment. So our stores refresh at least one 4-foot section almost every week of the year. So the assortment is always in flux. New items are constantly coming into the stores and underperforming items are being phased out. Although we drastically improved the process, which reduced the chances of errors, we were still highly reliant on Excel-based trackers and audits to ensure that what was planned to be the assortment in the store was actually what was being replenished. So the next 3 bullets, promotional planning, large variations in demand from store to store, and intermittent demand. So we had a lot of complex forecasting challenges with large variations in demand from store to store, along with the highly promotional nature of our business. Additionally, being a specialty retailer with a focus on innovation, many of our SKUs have intermittent demand, where 1 unit may not be enough, but 2 units are too many, especially when multiplied by 730 stores. The last 2 bullet points I touch on quite in depth in the rest of my presentation, but the final 2 challenges that we began our search, which ended with implementing RELEX, were the continued evolution is our company's continued evolution as an omni-channel retailer. We're trying to improve the experience and create a seamless transition from web to store. And we need to quickly react to changes in the business, whether that is a change in our supply chain network, selling channels, or new ways to deliver to our customers. And I'll go on in a little more detail on that in a couple of slides. So how did RELEX kind of fill those gaps and really meet the challenges that we needed? First and foremost, it sounds pretty elementary, but one of the biggest benefits of RELEX was the interactive UI. This allowed the team to quickly and easily review future forecasts, intervene where we seem necessary, and adjust allocation plans, whether that is a push allocation or a pull forward demand allocation. In addition to this, we were able to create a lot of exception-based reporting that could either live in a view or get automatically emailed on a daily basis, which increased the amount of issues that the team can review or even see on a weekly basis, which will drive in-stock improvements across the board. Product lifecycle planning. This is probably the area that we had the quickest return from implementing RELEX. It's almost embarrassing to say aloud, but in our past, our process to trying to align replenishment to our planogram data was dependent on live planogram data, which basically resulted in items not being removed from replenishment until the store physically reset the product. This means that we were both shipping to stores and buying back into the DC up until the day before an item reset. By integrating our planogram data directly into RELEX and the use of their lifecycle management, we are now able to target getting the store inventory down to 0 before the refresh is physically done, while also reducing DC inventory and stopping or slowing purchases based on the discontinuation for that item store combination. Ring fencing. Ring fencing is the concept of holding back a certain amount of inventory in the DC for our direct-to-consumer demand, but that's also another topic that I'll touch on in a lot more detail later on in the deck. Store-specific event planning. So with any retailer, store demographic and placement is a major driver in demand. Although when you look at the macro level, our business is split nearly 50-50 between vitamins and sports nutrition, our 2 large category buckets. But when you get down to the store-specific data, it's very, very different. Basic example of this, if a Vitamin Shoppe is located next to a yoga studio, you can expect our sports, mainly on-the-go nutrition, to be a major driver for sales. Our previous models were reliant on chain-wide promotional uplifts, based on product category, and we often recognize both over and under forecasting when you looked at the store level due to this. Although one would assume the baseline demand for a product location will account for shifts in trends, it was not enough to account for the bulk buying behavior that we saw at the store level on promotion. RELEX's ability to derive promotional forecasts using historical store SKU specific events was a major driver in us selecting their product, as I believe it to be the #1 opportunity for both increasing sales and reducing inventory here at the Vitamin Shoppe. Safety stock. So, I mean, very popular inventory term, but I found that the way in which RELEX calculates safety stock was a differentiator compared to their competitors. When looking at the Vitamin Shoppe's demand patterns, you'll often notice that demand comes in waves, mainly driven by customer trip frequency. Typically, forecasting and replenishment engines rely on moving averages over a period of time to determine a forecast or replenishment strategy. This works well for most basic replenishment business, but we found that it limited our sales upside as peaks of sales were viewed as outliers and often either diluted or completely thrown away when run through the models. When you have an item that sells on average 2 units a week over a 10-week period, but sold 5 units in a single week, you risk never having enough units on hand to meet the peaks in demand when using a moving average. Demand satisfied safety stock allows the forecast to not shift drastically from these events, but rather based on ABC classification, determine what levels of safety stock that store should hold to make sure that we can service those peaks. We still have a ways to go in optimizing these settings at the Vitamin Shoppe, but we have already recognized a significant improvement in our top item chain availability. The next steps for us to figure out how to offset the inventory increase for those products by decreasing our settings on some of our slower moving SKUs. And last but not least, the business rule engine. Something about the business rule engine during the initial demos really spoke to me. I saw it as a very simple way to walk through very complex rule sets that traditionally were back-end coding that could only be read or explained by a developer. But again, I'll talk more about that in a couple of slides. So here we have, being an omni-channel retailer, there's a lot that we have to focus on to balance store demand, wholesale demand, marketplace demand, as well as our own internal website, vitaminshoppe.com. Some of the key challenges that we faced. So first and foremost, we got the demand versus sales. So although this is not something that's really RELEX specific, it is a solution that we put in during implementation that I believe will pay dividends down the road and ultimately enable RELEX to forecast more accurately. Although we have a rather simple supply chain with only 2 distribution centers fulfilling direct to consumer orders, there are several elements that lead to the point of sale information for our direct business to not accurately depict the timing and placement of demand. One, as a company, we do hold back orders. So we do allow customers to order knowing that it may not ship in the normal 24-hour window due to item availability. The problem with that is if you use point of sale data, which is really ship sales data, your timing will always be off. If I order something today, but it doesn't ship from a week from now, from a forecasting engine standpoint, what we needed to know is that I ordered it today, not that it ships a week from now. Otherwise, we'll always be late to hitting that demand. Another piece of it is split shipments. So although each DC has a specific set of zip codes that they service, if an item is out of stock, our order management system will split or reroute a shipment to the other DC. In this instance, the sale will actually ring in the wrong location and impact the forecast and really cause both DC's forecasts to be out of whack. This solution not only is ideal for today, but it also future-proofs our sales and demand feed if we decide to expand the number of locations that we are shipping direct to consumer from. Next is our wholesale business. So at the Vitamin Shoppe, we have several international wholesale partners along with a few domestic. Although we plan to have the RELEX forecast for these locations in the future, we did not feel that the data streams we have today can help to really service RELEX's need to get us to a good forecast. Additionally, demand for these channels can be very erratic and the order patterns are not very consistent. A wholesale partner doesn't need to order every month if they don't see the need. To account for this demand and allow for us to continue to expand upon our footprint in this space, we developed a manual forecast feed with RELEX that RELEX will add to their forecast at the DC level to ensure that we are ordering into the DC to service this demand. This allows us to very quickly ramp up demand on certain SKUs at specific locations as trends change, or more importantly, as we launch new partners, we can very quickly incorporate their forecast into RELEX's engine. Next bullet point, so omni-channel inventory and channels competing. This is the ring fencing piece of it that I kind of spoke about earlier. This was a key requirement when evaluating what software to go through. At the Vitamin Shoppe, we have over 700 stores, and traditionally, direct consumer business was only 10% of our total sales, although that is improving with the shifts driven by COVID or improvements to our website, et cetera. We implemented what we call direct reserve several years ago to hold back inventory in the DC from shipping to stores, as we would prefer to have the inventory where we expect a guaranteed sale versus shipping it to a store and hoping that it sells. Although our legacy software provided a direct reserve, the means in which it was calculated was extremely complex and did not provide the flexibility to adjust as our business shifted from channel to channel. Additionally, over the past 2 years, we have been growing our auto delivery program, which is a subscription-based program, and we needed to make sure that those customers who signed up for that program had top priority when inventory became scarce. Since our auto delivery program looks like any other DTC sale in our data feeds, we implemented a forecasting floor using our forward-looking subscriptions and then applied a ring fence to the total DTC forecast. Currently, we're holding 100% of our DTC forecast in this ring fence until the next expected delivery into the DC. But we're already looking at, should we reduce that number down to really reduce the amount of buckets of inventory. I think anyone who's worked in inventory knows the more separate buckets of inventory you have, the more inventory you have naturally. So although I see the ring fence being very important, it is something that currently holding 100% of our forecast is probably too much, but that's something we're currently reviewing internally as well as with the RELEX team. And last but not least, phasing items out of store that remain web only. This is probably the area that we challenge the RELEX team the most on to develop a solution that works for what I believe is a relatively unique Vitamin Shoppe use case. Sometimes when an item does not perform well in store, our merchandising team decides to leave the product on the web due to positive performance. We needed to come up with a solution to service DTC demand while also flushing inventory to the stores to help with our sell down, as the majority of our selling power lives in store. After several renditions, we eventually landed on what I believe is a very simple approach, but it was not until all of the pieces of our RELEX software were put into place that we had the tools or the vision to build it. So first, when an item was declared web only, we broke the integrated model, and we only sent the store need up to and we only sent the direct channel need to our DC for ordering, but we continued to send the store need to our DC for replenishment. We also implemented a change in our ring fence logic where the DC will create a ring fence holding back inventory from store for the next 10 weeks of our direct demand. At some point, we were just, this item did not perform well in store. We likely are over inventoried if you look at it at chain level. So we wanted to limit the purchases and really kind of hold back that inventory in the DC for what we felt was an appropriate amount of time to sell down using our direct channel. These two simple changes allowed the system to keep pushing the inventory to the stores that are actually selling the product while also preventing buying back into the demand. What impressed me most about this solution was how it evolved over time. This was not something that anyone on the RELEX team has done before, and rather than giving up or using the classic consulting line of that was not in scope, they continued to dig deeper into our process until eventually we came up with what I think is an ideal solution. And strangely enough, it was more simple than any other rendition of the solution that we had. This leads well into my next slide, which focuses on the flexibility in the system using the business rule engine. So as I mentioned earlier, something about the business rule engine during the sales portion of this project really hit home for me. I've always been very hands-on with the systems I use, and something that has frustrated me throughout my career is just how difficult it was to make what I believe to be very simple changes. As much as I love my IT partners, the idea of not being reliant on coding or changing to complex algorithms was a dream for me, and I'm surprised pretty much every day on just how empowering this is for me and my team. Additionally, the business rules are structured in a very logical flow. It's easy for pretty much anyone to follow how the system is calculating and eventually got you the answer that we're delivering to. I can't count how many times I've had to water down an explanation in my past because either I couldn't fully understand how the system was working or it was so complex that only the person who actually wrote that code could understand it. Additionally, I love how expandable the business rule engine is. Although any change you make in the system should be well thought out and documented, I no longer need to write extremely detailed business requirements that once they are being worked on are set in stone, or otherwise you need to do a change request. Some of those examples I listed below. So first, we have our promotional business rules. We started out very simple for this. We were saying, look at the SKU, look at the location, and look at the depth of discount that we're building to determine what the lift should be. As we went further and further through UAT testing, we started implementing new data points for the system to check, including whether the promotion was on shelf or off shelf, so whether it's a feature or just an inline promotion, and then also length of promotion, because I think, again, as anyone who works in retail has recognized that, you know, a 2-day promotion behaves very, very differently than a month-long promotion. Other area that we saw this was on the new item references. So at first, we start at the lowest level of hierarchy and price point to determine a like item. Very, very basic. And, you know, what we noticed during UAT testing was it gave us a good starting spot, but often led to poor forecasting on the items that we felt we should have had the strongest forecast on. For example, we sell several flavors of Celsius energy drink. Why would we want to use a blended average for the item category when a new flavor comes out instead of matching directly to previous Celsius launches? Not only added new attributes to this business rule like brand, form, because pills perform very, very differently than a gummy or a liquid. We also expanded upon the business rules to one by one drop off different attributes, so eventually we could get a match even if the perfect match is not available. Additionally, we introduced what I believe is called naive references. So we do have several product lines that come out of the gates very, very strong. You know, the first 2 to 4 weeks of sales are strong, and then it levels out to a baseline. Unlike the rest of our business, where you kind of see a ramp up over time in demand. So we're able to identify those items just based on, you know, the planner's knowledge, and we're able to use these naive references to say, I don't want you to model the demand against current selling behavior. I want you to go back to when this product launches, and that's the behavior that I want to focus on. Last point of this topic is the power of having the live QA platform that allows you to quickly test changes to business rules using production data, so you can very easily identify the impact of those changes and then very quickly move to production when you're satisfied with very little risk of complications. I'm not sure if this is unique to the companies I've worked at in my career, but I've never had a QA system that was consistently updated to mirror production, often leaving tests to be inconclusive or incomplete. Another area that the RELEX team is very flexible on is the people, or the culture at the company. This is one area of a sales cycle that you kind of have to just go with your gut with. Everyone preaches partnership, but once the contract is signed, not everyone follows through. Although our go live was on time, it did not come easy. And honestly, there were many times I questioned my own sanity when holding firm on the go live date. The first obstacle we faced were data feeds. Although we've been sending data to our previous provider for years, I saw this project as an opportunity to review each and every data feed and make sure that we are passing the most accurate information, both for today, as well as future-proofing the data feed, so that way we could start introducing new data points as we went further and further down the road, and kind of like what I walked through before on the new item and the promotional data feeds. This oftentimes, unfortunately, led to rework of the data feeds. In addition to this, since RELEX is a store SKU specific forecasting engine, we needed to take a lot of data that either lives at too high of a level or doesn't exist at all in our ERP system, and finds ways to pass that data to RELEX to consume. In the end, it ultimately took us a lot longer than anticipated to build out those data feeds. Rather than waiting for the data feeds to be completed before going to the UAT testing, which is RELEX's standard practice, we work closely with the RELEX team to bucket the different data feeds by importance or module. So we could work with an agile approach where as soon as the data was available to stand up the module, it would go to my team for UAT testing. In hindsight, I think we actually landed on a more optimal approach, as UAT testing is the most difficult and time-consuming portion of any project, and this allowed it to be handled in bite-sized chunks instead of trying to check everything at the same time. Just as we finished the first obstacle, we got hit with some turnover as well as COVID-19. So we're back in schedule in May, and very quickly in a 2-week period, 2 of my 3 RELEX super users that were responsible for UAT testing and training decided to leave the organization to pursue a new opportunity. 2 weeks after that, COVID-19 breaks out and our business moved to remote working. In addition to that, over that same time period, we had 3 new planners who have never seen RELEX before, and now we're going to be introduced to the system for the first time remotely. We were so close to the finish line, but we just did not have the bodies to finish UAT testing, and almost half of the Vitamin Shoppe knowledge of how RELEX works went out the door, which made training that much more difficult. Project team very quickly put together a proposal for what they referred to as super user as a service, which provided us with a dedicated resource that could help us quickly train the team and my new super users, while also lending a hand in finalizing our UAT testing and any business rule changes that were required due to things that we found in UAT testing. Overall, just thank you to the RELEX project team. I know over the time I put you guys through hell, but Brett, Myron, Nate, James, Paulina, Brittany, and anyone else who worked behind the scenes, without you guys, this could not have been successful. Overall, that's my prepared remarks. I hope you guys enjoyed learning a little bit about my journey that we were on implementing RELEX. And although I'm not able to share with you wild success stories just yet, thanks mostly to COVID-19 impacts on supply chain and manufacturing, I'm confident that implementing RELEX has already and will continue to improve our omni-channel product availability while also driving down inventory ownerships. I believe that we hardly scratched the surface on what my team can do with the software, but we're well on our way now that we're in, I believe, month 3 of implementation. That said, thank you all for your time today, and I think we could move into any Q&A.
Thank you so much, Steve. We have plenty of Q&A questions, so we might shorten our break just a bit because I think a lot of them retailers will want to hear. So our first question, you mentioned doing agile sprints for UAT and seeing great benefit there. They would like to know more about the implementation. The question is, did you deploy the promotion planning and lifecycle management?
You froze up a little bit.
Same time as the replenishment and forecasting functionality, or did you deploy it step by step?
Okay, I think you broke up a little bit, but I think I got the gist of the question. We actually, both lifecycle planning and promotional planning were in our system from day one. Really, the way we broke up the go live and really our pilot process was we continue to allow our old software to replenish from DC to store, but we really did a lot of our UAT testing upstream of what are we buying at. So we're allowing RELEX to buy from our vendors, as well as while that was happening, we had the ability to review promotional forecasts and really kind of continue our UAT testing in a pilot environment. So, but as far as every module, every store from pretty much day one of go live has been used and implemented.
That's great. Excellent to hear. And it sounds like a great process. You did mention simulations. What does that mean in practice? And what kind of simulations did you or your team do during the implementation and now that you're live in the system?
Yeah, I would say that the most powerful places I've seen simulations used, one was when figuring out demand satisfied. So, demand satisfied, as I mentioned before, is a very powerful tool, but it's also a very risky tool. You could throw a lot of inventory out there at stores, and unlike, some bigger box stores, not every store we have has a back room. So we don't, we have to limit how much safety stock goes out there. So what we were able to do is really rerun demand satisfied and tests over and over again using different settings to see what the change to total inventory would be down the road. And even just recently, as I was mentioning before with ring fencing, we launched with holding 100% of the forecast in the DC over until the next delivery. Very quickly, actually yesterday, I was able to test what happens if we do 90%. How much will that reduce my inventory in the store? And we're talking less than 24 hours. You could go from idea to test results to implementation, which is really nice to see.
Yeah, that simulation is a powerful tool that you can make business decisions almost on the fly.
Yep, no, it's good. And you have a lot more transparency to what it will do. We've done simulations also on safety stock changes. So safety lead time, extending how much time is going to the store or from the vendor to the DC.
Definitely. This will be our last question. You did mention that you frequently introduce new items into your assortment. The question is, how has the RELEX system helped you with new merchandise assortment being introduced and forecasting for these new items?
Yeah, I think the best way to describe it is back when, before RELEX, we really broke our network into 3 tiers. We said high store, medium store, low store, depending on the department. And we would come up with an allocation strategy that was pretty flat. So when you think about 700 stores, you got over 200 stores in every bucket. There is no way that those stores are going to behave the same. But it was the tools, the resources that we had at the time. Instead, now we're able to actually map those items to a like item. So first, the system goes through with what I explained before and determines a like item. But we also have the ability to say, we don't really agree with the system. We want to choose this item instead. And really model the demand and really the replenishment strategies based on actual performance. Additionally, what I kind of spoke about before for our large launches. So I don't know if anyone out there drinks Bang energy drink, but they launch a couple of new flavors every year, and almost every time the new flavor is a hit coming out the gate, and then it goes back down to the baseline for that brand. We have the ability to say, all right, I want to model not against the baseline demand, but instead the launch demand for those products, which should absolutely help us build the sales on that product from day one versus waiting weeks and weeks and weeks for the forecast to catch up to the need.
That's great and wonderful for sharing. Thank you so much for your time today. We will take a shorter break for coffee. We'll take a 3-minute break and come back for our last presentation of the day. Steve, thank you so much for sharing your insight and the story of Vitamin Shoppe with us.
Thank you all.